It's probably, yeah. Hi. Welcome, everybody, to Game of
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the Cosmos from independent validator teams. And luckily, you're going to be spared the sound of spiders fucking on Null's balcony, thanks to some last-minute adjustment of the audio at his end. We are without nearly docs. Then we are without Usurper Rhino tonight. He's been called away to important issues. Servers on fire. Off the shoulder of Orion, I'm sure. And so it's just going to be the three of us. I was about to say the three of us flying solo, which is one of the more idiotic things I would have said today.
I feel like Usurper's probably just been told by his wife that he has to go to dinner or something like that.
Maybe it's date night. Rugged for
Maybe
date night. Maybe that should have been the real name of the episode.
I mean, I'll give a pass for that.
That's
Code Hands has rugged us several times for date night.
But no, we are. Well, actually, maybe I shouldn't be living in hope. I believe in the fact we are going to have Code Hands on in the next month, and not get rugged for date night again. But maybe that's what will happen. So yeah, Null's gone. Okay, very good. That doesn't make any sense. If you're listening later on a podcast player, for some reason he's just turned off his camera, which was funny. So this week, what's been happening other than the bear continues? I suppose there was some. There was some. I mean, we were talking about this before the show started, weren't we, Schultzy, about how difficult it seems to be for builders to get funded in the space, either by foundations or by community pools. And I think there's. On Juno, there's obviously a couple of props up, excuse me, at the moment, related to getting they're not actually up live yet, are they? They're just on Commonwealth, on getting funding, and okay, that was weird. And there's also the same thing's been happening on Evmos, right? There have been a load of community props, although those have been more spammy. That's really disturbing.
I don't know what's going on. My main camera just shattered. This is my my phone camera. It's really weird now on the Mac. It just like connects to your phone camera as an option. Hang on, I'll go away and try and figure this out.
Are those fake bricks
in the corner?
Room? Yeah, those fake bricks.
Fake.
That's actually. Hang on.
I'm really sorry to anybody listening later. Oh, they're pictures.
That's actually cool.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I thought they were fake bricks.
Got some Steamboat Willie over there.
Straya. Okay, right.
So it's actually like historical photos and shit that's up there.
It's actually historical shit. Okay.
I don't know. What do? Do I just hold this here? Or?
Just prop it up with something.
Fuck.
So this is where we need that technical difficulties side that Usurper made in Photoshop. Okay.
I'm just not sure I can hold this for an hour and a half. So,
like I said, prop it up with a book, and then I remember there's no books in Australia, so that's not going to work.
I ordered some books to get them into Australia. I mean,
to get them into the country. I mean, that's ironic, isn't it? Ordering books all the way from America. Anyway, this is unbelievably distracting.
I'm looking to MacGyver some shit together here.
Okay. Well, do you want to maybe like turn your camera off for a second, engage with the conversation, or just kind of lean it up? You got a laptop, right? Why not just lean it up against the laptop?
I kind of feel like we're in an action shot in like Top Gun or something, where it just like zooms in real hard, and then some big old like action scene happens.
It's very like Requiem for a Dream or something. Isn't it?
The camera, it's supposed to be coming out of there, man. I'm confused.
it's like that thing, you know, in some films when people are talking and it's all like a close cut, and then it suddenly expands to the edge of the like the full like IMAX size, and you're like, all right, action scene. We
Yep.
just know that's about to happen. That's kind of what it feels like.
Got
I
the
feel
the
like I could,
Churchill
like-
zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna have a hunt around for some duct tape. I reckon I can MacGyver this together at the top of my monitor here. Seems like I'm just gonna stick it to literally my other camera.
Okay. Do you want to?
It actually seems much nicer picture too. I might actually start leaving this other shitbox camera at home. I'm sure there's like some sort of adapter stand you can get to like hang this thing off your monitor. Give me a minute.
Well,
Things
that's what
that we
I tried
talk
doing.
about. The things that we talk about on Game of Nodes more than the Cosmos include our microphone setups, our desk setups, and apparently our technical difficulties. So yeah, I think the thing that I've noticed, we don't validate Evmos, but I've seen a lot of what look like spam props over there, right? And a lot of that is it kind of just generic shit, bear market trolling because it's assumed that there'll be fewer voters, or is it actually projects looking for cash, like viable projects?
Okay, so I don't know that I'm really qualified to answer this, but from my understanding, it's more of they're trying to prove a point. I don't think they're actually going for funding. A lot of them are being sent up by what is it, the Evmos for Volunteers validator, which is already one of the top validators and makes them the most. And I think what they're trying to do, it seems like they're trying to make a point about what governance should be about and who gets funding, and the message isn't coming across. That's my read on it. So, like, if you read through the first proposal that everyone got all fired up about and did no with veto, the ending is kind of where you get the final statement that it changes the idea of they're actually going for funding, and they're more saying something like, "We want to stay a volunteer project, but there's something going on in the background where, like, funding is becoming like a weird political game, and so we just want to end the conversation now and make sure that we're still a volunteer team." Something really weird like that is going on, I think, but my read could totally be wrong here.
Okay, so that sounds like more of an internal thing for like them than it does for anything else, potentially.
That was my take, yeah. But then the follow props have been a similar thing where, well, now let's decide if that's the case, then what else are we going to do? Like trying to define yes, no, and no with veto. I'm okay with that. I don't like it, but it seems like it used to be that I really wanted to define yes, no, no with veto, and abstain. The problem is it has such different context for each prop, right? So like with
Yeah.
Prop 16, abstain came from like what level of evidence do we have to actually make a decision, right? Versus an abstain on a funding prop could just be, I didn't have time to look into it and I'm going to defer to my delegators in order to vote for it. So it's just two different kind of takes. And so trying to define it through governance, that's a pass for me.
Yeah, I think it's quite highly contextual, isn't it? What you see on other chains, I think more commonly, is that people write on each prop what the proposer suggests the meaning of those is. And like as a voter, you're always entitled to go, all of those definitions suck, no with veto, right? That's your prerogative. So yeah, that is a bit strange to try and like define it ahead of time, I think. And then okay, that makes more sense. We were just talking about Evmos for volunteers, Null.
Oh man, what a saga that's been in the last week or so.
We've kind of been watching it from the outside.
Be prepared for this camera situation to go horribly wrong. I was unable to find any kind of duct tape. It is precariously like lent up against my other camera that I bent down and ready to fall at literally any minute. That said, oh my god, the whole like saga of props on the last week and a half on Evmos has just been out of control. It's baffling. But the definitions attached to the yes, no with veto is just nonsense. I don't know why they keep doing that. And yeah, it's like they're trying to load the answers to mean things that they don't mean. It's really annoying. So I guess from Kingnode's perspective, we've just basically put a memo in there that we don't recognize it as a valid proposition, and it's just spam and no with veto. So don't know.
I don't know that it deserves a no with veto, but in my mind, that definition kind of falls into our. I don't know if we've ever actually had a discussion on camera before, but our discussions around chains having their own constitutions. I don't know if that's really something that can totally be represented on chain in such a way that, you know, that makes sense. Like in secret, we did a something of a constitution a while back, but we agreed like 4 things, right? And really, it should be like broken down as granular as possible, as atomically as possible. Where do we agree on Article 1? Yeah, okay, moving on. But still, that's not really an on-chain thing, and I don't think that a definition of what each voting measure represents should also be on-chain. I don't know. I'm kind of torn. It feels like it should be an ever-evolving conversation.
I think that propositions should be written such that they are you agree or you don't agree with what they've proposed. I don't think there should be any like other attachments at all. I think it should be black and white that you either agree to what they've requested or what they're saying, or you don't agree. And then, if it's nonsense or spam, it's just a no with veto. Abstain needs to go for sure.
I don't know, I kind of disagree on that one. I think the current system is kind of broken enough that you need abstain as a get out clause, and it's only but with that said, it's only tenable because your delegators can override your vote. If delegators couldn't override your vote, then you would need to remove abstain. Yeah, 100%.
Well,
because then you would be pushed into yes or no. Like it would be that simple. Can't support this, won't support this. Fine. It by default has to be a no. My hands are tied.
Can we agree that what happens when you abstain could possibly change? Like when you abstain and there is more yeses than nos, right? You still achieve quorum and then push the yes over the line, even if there's not that much of it. If there's like a few yeses and a shitload of abstains, you'll still like push the vote over. Say if no one votes no, right, and 3 people vote yes, and the entire rest of the set votes abstain, then it'll pass with like a couple of votes yes.
Sure, but that's like it's very rare that the abstains are going to push a vote over the quorum threshold.
Well, abstains count as a vote. So
yeah,
if you have like
no, I mean I know they do, but like it's a theoretical position, but I don't think
like highly controversial propositions. You get a lot of abstains, right? And then you've got like a minority, a big minority is actually doing the voting, and a lot of the times in those highly controversial things, you've got like, a vocal minority that is just pushing an agenda to get the small amount of votes they need to get over the line to make it pass. Like if you're going to abstain, it just shouldn't count as a vote. You should just register that it's an abstain. It shouldn't count towards quorum.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could agree with that. I could agree that abstain shouldn't count towards quorum, but I do think abstain is necessary as an option to, in the current system anyway, as an option to record a vote as a validator that either you can't or won't make this call.
So recording that vote's only to prove participation, right? So you say, "Oh, look, I do vote."
Well, I think the point is
no, you just
right, but the point is a lot of the people who vote via script just vote yes on everything. So if you see abstain,
who is voting by script?
There are some people who vote.
There are lots, there are lots of people
vote by script, 100%. There are plenty of validators who just vote straight yes. That said,
Elon's fucked me today. Fuck you, Elon.
That said, I reckon there probably are a couple of validators that just blanket vote abstain and then come back and edit their vote if they have the time. So it's maybe 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But like Schultzy said, either just before the show or at the start, a funding prop is like a quite good example of where a validator might say, for whatever reason, I actually don't think that I can make this call, or it's not my like it's almost a conflict of interest if you yourself get or have had funding or even a foundation delegation. It is it actually no, but it is right to say you can say somebody else shouldn't have it because that is your opinion as an elected representative. Just because you're a paid member of parliament doesn't mean you can't say we won't give a contract to this company. That's actually fine, isn't it? That's literally your job, in fact.
Well, so one of the few times that we consistently vote abstain is actually for on Secret Network, because James is part of the support team. He also is part of Lavender 5. We always vote abstain just because then we consider it a conflict of interest, right? Because then, in a sense, the secret work kind of subsidizes like payments from Lavender 5, right? So to me, it just seems like it makes sense to vote abstain. And then I typically put in the memo saying, hey, I vote abstain just because it's a conflict of interest. You gonna make it over there?
What was
I'm
that?
crying.
You talking to me?
It's
Oh.
fine.
Yeah, what it?
I think
Oh,
there's a
Jesus.
yeah. He's
Someone
talking
call an
good,
Amber.
right? I think there's a compelling case to be made that you could probably get rid of quorum and then also get rid of voters validating for their delegators, right? I understand from like if you try and create a mimic of a republic voting system, that validators should be voting for their delegators, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be that. I don't see why validators should be voting for the delegators unless you're trying to fulfill the quorum story, where a prop can only go through if a sufficient percentage of the delegators actually agree with it. And I think that in a world where validation and such competition is here, I don't think it really fulfills anything, because so many validators vote for the sake of being able to say they voted as opposed to what they actually think the prop is for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but then wait, so you're saying you would do away with the quorum?
I don't know necessarily doing away with quorum, but I think that the current story of delegated proof of stake within the Cosmos is flawed, and I think that there's a strong argument to be made that validators shouldn't control the vote of their delegators, but in doing so, quorum would basically never be reached. So what would you do with quorum? Is quorum necessary? I don't know.
It's a good question. I mean, there's a whole. I just saw in the spreadsheet somebody just wrote, the phrase says to get fucked because upgrades. That wasn't exactly what I was about to say. It was a little bit close to what I was about to say, which is that.
So I'm taking notes in the spreadsheet, and I just already knew what you were going to say.
We've been doing this podcast too long, but it is true that while upgrades are a part of consensus, individual stakers have like actually a responsibility, and at the moment that responsibility is devolved to some extent to validators, right? So I actually don't necessarily disagree with you, Schultzy, but the question is, in that case, like, how do you align incentives so that those delegators will vote? Because we probably right now, let's say in a bear market, have a lot of stakers who are effectively AFK. They've gone away and they'll come back at some point. So unless you do something quite radical, like expiring stake that's tied to governance or something like that, which would be spicy and also have its own problems, right? Because if you say to people, oh, well, you only get staking rewards if you're participating in governance, fine. Okay, what's the corollary of that would be that the amount of liquid tokens would arbitrarily increase, like via these cycles to do with governance voting, and the whole security aspect of DPoS, like, wouldn't work. So there's a lot of sense in which the more you scratch on the surface of what we currently got, it's the simplest combination of all the Legos to make something functional that you could put into production. But it's like, how can we align those incentives better, particularly the ones where you're like trying to get, I think we're both talking about the same thing, which is like, can you get a larger number of individual entities to vote instead of the validators, right? I think that's what both of us are trying to arrive at, an idea for how you would do. But then if all those people like go away in a bear market, then maybe you just can't make quorum to do an upgrade, right? Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, and there's also a question like, should upgrades even, I mean, I guess because you're changing the software, right? That's the problem with proof of stake.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of it as well, right? Maybe upgrades should be their own thing. It probably does make sense that validators vote on any sort of software upgrade because they're the ones that are responsible for it, for lack of a better term. So it makes sense for them to vote specifically for that. But maybe if it is community funding thing, or maybe if it is just a signaling prop, maybe validator votes should account for nothing.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to interrupt this interesting discussion for a second. In the chat, Latert has said that Null looks like he's doing the podcast while on break from his shift at the local nature sanctuary. There you go. Sick burn. But like we have been having this kind of long running shower thought, if you like, about slashing and about whether or not it achieves anything, particularly hard slashing. But also, yeah, even to some extent, soft slashing, right? Because the incentives to keep your validator up are strong enough anyway, because you're losing money because the majority of validators are still making, like, mint fees is the most important component of revenue. If it wasn't, then yes, you would maybe need soft slashing, but like, so to use the other network that I know both me and you are on, Shortsy, or we're sort of participating on something like Aptos, there are a whole bunch of upgrades which have nothing. They're not in consensus. They just roll out the upgrade, and when voting power gets to a point, the nodes that didn't upgrade stop moving. The ones that did upgrade keep moving. But it's not you don't app hash, right? You don't have a lot of the deadlock type constraints that you do in Cosmos, where the intention is to sort of catch and punish potentially Byzantine behavior. It's almost like this. I don't know if this is by design, but it feels like the philosophy there is a bit different. It's like, it's probably not deliberate. And in any case, the system is designed to stop this anyway, which it has done. So that node's just not making money, and that's up to them. And maybe that's like more the avenue we need to be thinking about, which is, incentives, right? Is carrot, not stick. And maybe that applies to the governance conversation as well. And actually, in the chat, Ben Davis said a little while ago, can you have conflict of interest in DPoS? Isn't the point of DPoS about alignment of interest? So I think this must have been when you were talking about secret, but the point at the end there about alignment of interest, I think, is like what we're talking about here as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that going back to your statement about Aptos, I think that one of the core issues there is that Aptos isn't intended to fulfill like an IBC image, right? It's not intended to be forked for a dozen other networks to launch off of. And so I think they recognized early on that they're probably going to control the stake for the first, let's say, 5 years. And if they're controlling the stake, they pretty well know that no one's going to try and take over because they control it, or they custodian. There's a word there I'm looking for that I'm not finding. They're custodians of the stake. Well, yeah, it's centralized right now. Yeah. And so they don't need to worry about a nefarious behavior coming because they know what they are. Whereas for Cosmos, we could launch a network right now that is worth, you know, a thousandth of a penny with 1,000 tokens, and then someone can buy and, you know, take it over or whatever. And so in order to count for a new network coming up, for it to not immediately be bought out, I think it makes sense for it to, you know, to have more stringent, scary, punishing mechanics built in immediately. Near similar to Aptos in that there isn't slashing right now, and there hasn't been, and they aren't intending to really do slashing yet. Because I think it's just an expectation of like development alignment. For Near, their priority is sharding, right? They want to be able to basically break out further and further shards for validator sets. And so it'll always be like naturally, based on how they're designing it, naturally balanced. And so something that can't take over the set to try and do 51% attack, because it'll just balance itself back out with how they're designing it.
Right. So I guess it's maybe, I mean, maybe it's not exactly, it's not fundamental to the design of Cosmos, but it does fall out of the design of the Internet of Blockchains that you're not only right. So I think it comes down to, my brain just caught up with what you said, that whatever you know about the chain you are currently on, you obviously don't know about every chain that's adjacent to you via IBC, right? That I think is, like, in a nutshell, the essence of the problem of why the environment is always significantly lower trust.
Yeah, yeah.
So what does that mean for governance? Well, at least those people can't vote on your chain until mesh security comes along, in which case they can. So then you'll have people AFK on multiple chains at the same time, resulting in a lack of quorum being achieved.
And then
So-
Cosmos Station will truly have the ultimate power.
Yeah.
So there's other aspects to, like, conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. So the other day I got a duly probably deserving ear bashing from some people at Kujira because of how I voted on a proposal on Stargaze that they saw as a conflict of interest between the chains. Which was not entirely correct. It was more that my personal feelings towards, mechanics of liquidity pools and fragmenting liquidity was the reason that I voted how I voted. And other people perceived the vote to be against the chain that was the target of the spend proposal. So multi-chain validators have an inherent conflict of interest depending on the type of proposal and what it is proposing between two separate chains. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Is that all of, whether it's validation or whether it's helping out with some code or whether it's, whatever, having met people, there's the active group of people in Cosmos is actually quite small, and the further you go back to the first group of chains, the smaller it sort of gets. So there is like I mean, this is nepotism, right? In a nutshell, this is why you have political and social elites. So there is an element in which perhaps validators in that sense do need to be held to account for the exact reasoning behind their votes in that way. Like, although it's a pain in the ass, actually, maybe that is actually things functioning correctly, which is the whole, taking it back to the, defining yes, no, no with veto, etc. Is that, like, the whole point is that I think all of our can't do that is basically because it's social, isn't it? The consensus around what those things mean. And actually it's kind of the same problem with feature, not a bug maybe, with governance, is that it actually takes place outside of where the vote is recorded, and it always will do. So I mean,
So what I think it was Pokachu. It might have even been you, Schulte, who was explaining like how they vote as a multi-chain validator, because you guys are on a shitload of chains, and so is Pokachu. And it was one of his, or someone in the group chat was saying that they vote aligned to the chain that the proposal is on, in the best interest of that chain, is how they like get around that. So whether or not you're on two chains or not, if the proposal's on Stargaze, they vote in the best interest of Stargaze. If it's on the hub, then they vote in the best interest of the hub, regardless of what the effect is on the other chain.
I would say that's generally true. Yeah. I think I've said that before. There's of course like the greater good. There's the good of the chain, and there's like a greater good. And there are some examples of votes like Prop 16 where I voted what I thought was the greater good of the greater cosmos, as opposed to just what is good for the chain itself. But yeah, what you said is our general philosophy.
Yeah, which is, I guess it's, you know, it makes sense in the context that what we've seen. But if you were, it would be interesting to see how that panned out in a kind of Solana validator level money. You know what I mean? Where your conflict of interest between one chain was like, on this chain we make $1,000 a month, let's say, and we spend $500 a month on servers, so we're making $500 a month. Cool. On this one, we hire 2 full-time members of staff to keep up with the contract that we have to run this node. Like that is because that's where you also clash up with the fact that validators are not representatives in a representative democracy. They are businesses with tax seasons. And you know, the title of this podcast was a direct reference to it's corporation tax season in our jurisdiction, and we've just finished our draft return. And what you learn from the way that crypto is taxed for a business is that the good times are good, but you also pay very, very heavily for anything you compound during the good times to hedge against, well, to basically have a long term. If you want to be a validator where people are like, why don't you restake, right? If you want to restake or compound to show your long-term interest and alignment with a chain, it's going to cost you in a funny way when you're no longer making any money. Would be my, like, we're fine. I'm not complaining. That would be crass, and we are very happy to pay our taxes, but it is interesting to now see it all in a spreadsheet and go, this particular line here, this cost, because the tokens that are restaked are now worth nothing. This money that we are paying taxes on was a principled decision. And so then I look at a situation like, would we definitely vote in the best interest of a chain where we had one massively outsized paycheck that was paying for the party and the staff, and then one paycheck over here that was completely that was a rounding error? I don't know. I don't know what we would do in that situation.
Do you think that, like, whether or not you restake your tokens is, you know, you being aligned with the chain? So we were just doing the delegations policies for Juno, and one of the policies is that you know, you have a certain amount of restake during the period and a certain amount of bonded tokens during the period. And, you know, that is based around like showing your commitment, I guess, to the chain. But from a business perspective, a lot of time it doesn't make sense, particularly like you're saying regarding taxes, when you penalized basically in some jurisdictions for the way we can restake, especially in a heavy bull market when the token price is going up and you don't know when the cliff is. And if you're restaking, you're taking on all of the income tax liability without taking any money off the table for a tax. So I think it's a hard thing to like balance.
Well, there was a really good point made by Artifact the other day. Said something. I don't know, because this is potentially unpopular, so I feel kind of bad to have basically just pinned it on somebody else and then gone, these are not my words. But something very smart, right? Which is that I think their background is financial services or commodities, maybe commodities. And they said, look, the whole game is maybe not of business more generally, but certainly what we do, which has a financial element where the price is volatile, right? Is that you need to identify whether you're in a short or a long position. Now, I'm sure like Null fucking knows all of this, so this is just really obvious. But if you're in a short position, you probably want to. Sorry, if you already have I've already forgotten what he fucking said. Now I sound like a fucking idiot. So he said like if you've got like a raw component, and then there's things that component can make, you want to be long the derivatives because they will get made over time with a longer lead time and are less elastic to changes in the market. And if the price is up on the thing that makes the other things, I don't know what was a good example of this, like palm oil, right? Palm oil and Nutella, right? Nutella has to be made of palm oil. It has a lead time on it. They're always going to demand palm oil, right? So you want to be long Nutella, and if the price of palm oil goes up, you want to get rid of your palm oil options that you have, right? You want to get rid of your short position. I think that's what he's getting at. But the point is this: is that if you're in a validator, and even if you're DCAing, like Null would. Right, if you're above the point where it's reasonable for you to sell to make a business profit or to make acceptable revenue, you should always sell the tokens that come your way, because the tokens have no intrinsic utility. They're not palm oil or whatever. You can't make additional things out of them with a little star, because some would argue that point. And as a validator, more tokens are coming in the future. So you're in default a sort of a long position where they're going to come to you anyway. So you're already exposed to the long benefit. It's just that the cost of not doing that is affected by compound interest, especially if you're in the early days of a chain, right? I thought that was a very clever like observation to like summarize the whole dilemma, I guess, if you like. And you suddenly go, shit, hang on, wait, the dominant strategy is basically always to sell, if I understand this correctly.
So here's what I think, right? As a validator, you make a constant revenue, whether it's a big one or a small one. You have a constant revenue of tokens, right? And I don't like, obviously I'm biased because we're all validators here, but I don't have a problem with selling a large percentage of it most of the time. We don't always sell, but I'm saying I don't have a problem with people selling them, depending on the market conditions. Like when you take into account, so we have usually like a line in the sand, and when the price is over the line, we sell them. And when the price is under the line, we just compound them because it doesn't make sense to sell them, right? But those tokens that get compounded probably never really get sold. They just sort of sit there staked, because unstaking and selling is just,
right,
not really something we do. We sell revenue when it makes sense to, and then when it doesn't make sense to, because of mainly reasons like damaging the market more than it's already, underpaying.
Sure.
And also like public perception as well, as someone who's like actively damaging the market and the brand by bashing the price into the ground.
But so in Australia, when you stake, does that count as a disposal? Like, do you when you
Man,
claim the reward, and then so you claim the reward, you get some tokens. Now you need to decide whether to stake or sell. In our jurisdiction, whether we stake or sell, we pay the tax on it. Bam, that exact moment. You need to execute that within the same trading day, either staking or selling. Otherwise, the tax gets a whole lot more complicated, believe me. But if you make a just binary decision, either way, the amount of tax you pay on that day is the same. The only difference is one situation, it goes to your balance sheet of assets where you say, I have magic internet money beans in a box here. They're staked, they're gaining interest. And then over here, you have pounds, but you pay, whether I get 500 money beans staked or whether I get 500 pounds, I still pay £100 in tax. And at the end of the year, I have to pay that tax, even if I don't have that £100. Like, we as a company have to pay that. And if we don't have that, then,
Yeah. So what you're saying is that
times, I guess,
when you claim your tokens, like your commission and your rewards, right, you're incurring an income tax liability, which means that you owe income tax on that money. If you have money to pay the income tax with from selling it, then you're fine, and you've got your margin between what you sold and what your tax is. So you get to keep 70% and the government gets 30%. So that's at the price when you sell, right? So if you sell 1,000 and they're worth $10 each, then you owe $3,000 in tax, and you've got $7,000 in your pocket. If you claim them and restake them, then you still incur the income tax liability at the price they were when you claim them, which is, so you still owe $3,000 worth of tax. And if you stake them and they go to, so you take your $7,000 and you stake them, and then the price goes down to $1, well, you've got $1,000 worth of tokens, and you have a capital loss of $6,000. So that's the way it would work if you're an individual in Australia. I'm having a dispute with my accountant about how it works.
But so in the situation where you end up in a loss position.
So hang on. So to further, before you go on, okay, to further like explain why that's bad, is because you can't offset a capital loss against income tax.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That is the essence of how, as a validator, you can go bankrupt by accident, and why I think we saw so many validators as soon as the FTX thing happened. Like, a lot of the big ones, the ones with big staff who had maybe expanded it a bit too big, they all had the same light bulb go on at the same time, and they fired all their staff. Like, the second you go, oh, wait, hang on, you're saying that no matter how much money we lose, we cannot offset that against our income tax. That is it's kind of obvious, really, but
however,
until you grasp it.
So in Australia, that's how it works as an individual, and people shoot themselves all the time with that same problem. Because here's an example, right? And this is different. Like, it's not staking. It's actually, no, this is a completely different problem. So I won't go into that. I'll go into it in a minute.
Use an example. Like, you're playing You're playing 2-Up on Anzac Day. You make $3,000.
You can't get taxed on gambling profits in Australia.
There you go. Wait, hold on a second. Are you telling me?
Yeah, well, hang on.
Why are we doing the validation where we could be playing 2-Up?
Yeah, well, aren't we effectively gambling anyway? So anyway, as a company though, company tax works different, and there's like 10 handfuls of different tax accounting strategies you can use to balance your books, basically. So as a business, like a proprietary limited, we can offset losses against income tax by treating them as stock, and then doing a write down on the value of stock at the end of the year and offset that against profits, because it's not income and like in a company, you make income as a company. It's really revenue, right? And so at the end of the year, you make a profit and loss. You don't have income. And so if you make operating profit of $7,000, and then you have a write down in your stock value of $6,000, which was how much the stock went down, you can offset that against your revenue. So not only that, if in a subsequent year, so say if we have a good year last financial year, right? Last year was good for validating. So say if we made $10,000, right, and we paid this $3,000 tax, then in the subsequent year we lost $10,000. We can claw back tax from the previous year to offset the losses from the subsequent year.
So this is the argument you're currently having with your accountants. So
no, my argument with the accountant is the value of the. So it's really funny when you make money as a validator because you don't have a cost base for creating the token, right? So the cost base could be the cost of the servers and the labor that goes into the work that generates the rewards, or the cost base could be the price of the token when you claim it. Do you have an income? Do you then have a cost base for a capital loss? It's just the semantics around that. I don't think we are in agreement. So we have to have like a bit more of a conversation around that. And it makes a big difference to the profit and loss at the end of the year. Because from what I gathered, they were saying that you have to take the revenue as the price at which you claim it. And then like they were proposing, from what I was hearing, they were trying to propose some other way of calculating the cost base, or that it's worth nothing when you get it. I'm like, fucking what? I just registered an income and now it's not worth anything as a cost base. Like, how the fuck does that work? So I'm not sure if I was just misunderstanding what they were saying, but we need to go back and clarify that in some meetings to get on the same page, or go and talk to the government and get a clarification from them.
yeah.
Well, that sounds like the path that the United States might be taking after a Tezos lawsuit that happened, where right now, in theory, whenever you claim, well, in theory, every 6 seconds, every block, you're supposed to pay taxes on the coins that are minted. Nobody does that, obviously, so most people do it based off of when they actually hit claim. But when they hit claim, that's whenever the income taxes accrue. Not when you restake, not when you sell, just right when you claim. And then when you sell, it'll do a different tax activity. However, during the Tezos thing, they said that, well, they were running their validators. They claimed a bunch, let's say 1,000 Tezos, and they never did anything with it. They just sat on it to hold it. Well, because in theory they created those tokens, that means it's on a product. And so if it hasn't been sold, that means they haven't gotten income for it yet. So it shouldn't be taxed yet. It shouldn't be taxed until it's sold or it's actioned upon, like sent to someone. And they actually won that lawsuit. The IRS agreed, like, yeah, okay, it makes sense that we wouldn't actually tax you for what you had already generated. It wouldn't tax it until it's actually sold. It wasn't sold, therefore you don't actually owe the however much in taxes that you owe, which is a big difference. That means restaking would then become extremely beneficial for United States companies, because they could continuously be restaking and not having accrued a tax yet because they actually haven't sold it. Therefore, whatever they're doing has no value yet.
Right, but wouldn't the staking be a disposal?
No,
because
I
you're
think
taking action.
No, I think technically the Tezos people were restaking or something, but staking is just basically continue to add to your pool. That's not considered an action within that jurisdiction. So
Right.
some people are actually acting on it as if that's the way the tax system works now. I'm not quite that aggressive in my interpretation of the tax law.
There is absolutely no way our government would have a bar of that shit.
Yeah. Here it is really specifically the second you stake that shit, disposal, bam. It's like you sold it. And actually the thing is, it's even more complicated because you have every time you get a small pool of tokens. So let's say you claim 50 Dogecoin. No, that's an actual coin. I was literally using that as a joke name, and it's been an actual crypto for a decade.
Are you sure that's accurate? That staking is a fucking disposal? That doesn't make any sense. You still own it.
It's somewhat silly. Yeah. Well, it's not. It's not a it's treated as if it's basically a taxable event. That is the main thing.
So
and
it wouldn't.
Additionally, there's actually another complicating factor around that, but that's not even worth going into. If you're interested, I highly recommend you read HMRC's Crypto Assets Manual. I believe it's called CRP 1000. It's a absolute unit with really detailed information on what you can and can't do, some of which is a little bit mental and completely unenforceable, to the extent that HMRC themselves, there's a couple of points where they're like, yeah, actually on balance, we're going to change this. But almost all the rest of it is like, do this to the letter and we won't touch you. Although
I don't understand how it's a disposal because you still own it.
I don't either. Well, it's not a disposal. It's just treated as if it's a disposal in terms of being a taxable event because it's moving out of your control. So it's like you've loaned it to another entity, and then when you regain it, because you then have that plus the tokens you got on top of it, and you go, oh, okay, that's now the value. So if it's gone down, when you unstake it, you take the diff of those two values and you go, oh shit, I've lost loads of money. And then boom, it's an instant capital loss, right? But the problem is that capital loss doesn't fucking help you.
The terminology seems fucked over there.
This is probably my terminology, not HMRC's. This is just my understanding of how it all fits together. So that because
it can't be a disposal.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's called a disposal, but it's the effect is the same, which is that you need to sell or stake on the same day. Otherwise, you need to keep track of the accrued value of that pot that you acquired on that day, and then you need to track the difference between values of all your individual pots from the delta of the value you got them to where they land when you sell them.
Yeah, like on a first in, first out basis, or a last in, first out basis, exactly. or whatever.
And that is absolutely mental if you're collecting revenue every week, let's say. I mean, very few people do claim rewards every week, right? For that reason.
So
I should also say, by the way, disclaimer to anybody listening and anybody watching: this is not tax advice. This is not tax advice. This is not financial advice. This does not constitute. Check in your local tax authority, including in the UK and Australia, with a qualified accountant like the ones that we have that check the spreadsheets that we give them, that we do these kind of maths and do this kind of high level bookkeeping to try and get an idea of our profit position. This is our understanding, but it is important
to
say
argue with them for hours.
We then give all these spreadsheets and these calculations and all of the source data to trained professionals who then actually come up with numbers and tell us what is right and what is wrong. So, pinch of salt.
I have solved my data acquisition problem for tax.
Please.
Hire scrapers on Fiverr.
Oh, that actually was it?
Yeah, you just go and pay the scraper and they go and get all the fucking information for you. It's great.
So what did you provide them? Like, here's an endpoint, suck it dry?
Here's the website. I need this information from these pages. Go to work. And then they just... And so they said...
You trust the output?
Well, you can spot check it, right? I gave them a spreadsheet in like a Sheets spreadsheet with all of the points that I needed, the data points. And so basically, basically it's just transactions, hashes on the left end, transaction hashes from address to address, amount, fee, all that crap. And then, the message JSON as well. at the end. So basically, then I can just go and do custom stuff on all the different contracts and shit to get out the information that I need. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll see how that goes.
I mean, that sounds better than what I did.
It's inspired, really.
The alternative is to go and do it myself manually because I can't scrape for shit. So I would have to go and either like query the chain, which is fucking impossible because of all the forks. And, you know, it'd be great if someone who had just indexed the entire fucking chain would just let us subquery the fucking thing. But anyway, mint scan. I get it, mint scan, but just fuck, man, give us a CSV for fuck's sake. And anyway, the only other way I could do it is to go and do it manually out of the Explorers, which just seems like a loss of an entire month.
Do you know, it didn't even occur to me when we were doing our 2022 wrap up one, like most bullshit moments of 2022. Up in there should have been when CoinGecko turned off the CSV export function for what was it, daily rolling price, because you could literally get a spreadsheet between like literally any days, and then you could just in Excel go, oh, this column here, and then the column one above to the left.
Why are you using Excel, man? You can
or whatever,
you can
add them together.
Use Sheets and query their API. They've got a fucking free API.
Well, what did I end up doing in the end? Now I ended up writing a script to do this for me because they have an API.
You can do it right in your sheet.
Well, I
don't even need it.
I'm just saying that you used to be able to just go like wham, get all the stuff, just open LibreOffice and go but, and then just drag the formula to the bottom, and then you had the fair market value for like whatever all time. That was pretty useful. But then, oh well, I have to just make a CSV on the command line now. That's easy peasy. Not the end of the world. We were talking before the show about Schultzy. We were talking in particular about funding stuff and the economics of that. And I saw like there was quite a bit of shenanigans about I think it was mainly around I think Confio was sort of talking about it, and there was some Rama's in the chat. I saw Rama was giving Confio a fucking hard time on Twitter, was one of the other things that happened. And
oh wait, hold on, I don't know about Rama giving them a hard time. What happened?
I can't remember exactly the context, but I think I saw Ethan Frey saying to Rama, do you not have any manners? And I felt like weighing in and saying Rama's just Australian wouldn't be helpful, so I just closed Twitter instead.
Got
it. But I was just like, I don't know to what extent this is boisterous Australianism versus actual giving people a hard time. But it certainly is the case that there's been like quite a bit of discussion behind the scenes about funding and whatnot for, I guess, dev teams that are building like, you know, sort of core-ish infrastructure in the space. And then we've also had quite a few conversations about, you know, grant applications and whether or not it's actually worth it and all that kind of stuff. And I think we have our own thoughts on whether it's worth bothering, for want of a better phrase, right? And then there's two things in Commonwealth right now, just on Juno. Like that's why we're talking about the FMOS for volunteers at the top of the show, right? There's two things on Cosmos on Commonwealth at the moment, which are coming up on chain on Juno. Gelato and Sardao, right? Which are both funding props for community projects, right? So there's all the way up here. There's like the ICF and stuff, and then there's because I don't know, Schultzy, because you were talking about like getting funding for a prospective project at some point, weren't you? Was that the ICF you were talking to, or was that somebody else?
I actually talked to quite a few projects about funding. I think I've talked to my project with you about it a couple times. Not the well. I have a project that I have pretty well scoped out, and I've gone to ICF. I've talked to quite a few different projects about getting funding, and basically universally it's been Like, yeah, that sounds like a really cool project. It sounds doable. We would love you through the funnel. And then the funnel just kind of dries up, right? So it's like one of those things where you have to, well, I haven't solved it yet, so I don't really know what the solution is.
How about we go find you a nice VC, sir?
I have talked to Strangelove, and Strangelove has been interested, but that enters a different realm, though. Like, there's a difference between a dev grant and going VC, because that means I'm, splitting things off, and I don't know. I feel like I'm not desperate enough for that yet.
When you're a VC, you're owned, aren't you? Like that's the thing. Like, and that's we both done the startup dance, haven't we, before, where you see the founders of the company you work for, and you get a lower salary when you go to startup anyway, because it's like, oh, it's all about the mission or whatever. But you usually get to do slightly cooler stuff, right? And then you have this like realization on like I don't know, like a company fucking Christmas do or something, where all the booze are getting drunk and there's a big swanky party and stuff, and you're like, the founders are basically on minimum wage because they're getting paid by a VC. That's like what's happening here. And then you're like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. Like they're the most exposed and they're getting paid well, I mean, but that's the deal, isn't it, right? So it's a bit of a strange like position to come in, like when because I mean, whether however long you've been in the space, right? If you've survived even this long through the bear, you must have at least a semi-viable business. So the idea of sacking a business on the head to go chasing VC money and then taking a very, very, very subordinate position in that relationship is like not super.
Yeah, exactly right. So like VC is an option, and I've actually spoken with traditional firms about funding for it. And again, interest, but again, VC. And I don't know. I've seen other people doing the song and dance about going for VC funding and doing Series A, seed funding, whatever. I'm just not interested in it. Like, I want to build a cool product that I would use. I don't want to.
Can you tell us what the project is, Schulte?
No.
The gist? Is it a tax platform?
No.
It's NFTs for dogs.
Exactly right. Yeah.
NFTs for dogs. Sorry, Shortsy.
Yep,
I know you told me in confidence, but I think it's a great idea. You need to get it out there.
Yep. I process the genes of a dog and then I print an NFT of it. Pretty cool.
Holy fuck, people would actually buy that, man.
They probably would.
If you literally got what's the thing I'm thinking of? Is it CRISPR? What's the thing where you have like the fingerprint of the genetic?
It's CRISPR.
No, is it?
Yeah.
No, isn't
no. Well, CRISPR is the
your
genetic
gene?
modification. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what if NFT collection, 1,000 unique NFTs, fucked up dogs?
You're talking about genetic sequencing.
Yeah, we just get right. We just run a bunch of dog DNA through CRISPR using Chat GPT, make NFTs. Everybody gets a fucked up dog. $5,000 each.
There, done. Problem solved.
Hey, we don't need money, fellas. I've got it sorted. Right. Let's go knock this out. If we hurry, we can have it done by midnight, and we'll be millionaires by 1 a.m. I reckon.
Okay, here you go. NFT generating platform, right? You can mint an NFT. You have to go and get your pet's DNA sequenced. You can enter the DNA into the platform, and you will get your dog's features based on its DNA sequencing in the NFT. But you can also CRISPR the fuck out of it and like fuck it up with CRISPR and do shit.
That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, that'd be fun.
So it's like a gamified NFT minting bullshit.
That sounds fun. Yep. Did anybody so I've jokingly now, whenever I share with any of the lads like an article or something, I just say, oh, here's the seminar reading for this week. But did anybody actually read the article that I put in the chat the other day, which was in the seminar reading category? Because that what Noel just described could literally be an actual modern art piece, like as in an actual there's this whole description of a modern art piece in that article where the people who do it are told what to do verbally by the artist. It's never written down, and they perform the piece in a gallery, and somebody was able to buy this artwork. You basically get lawyers either side of the table to witness what is happening, and the artist writes down from memory what they told everybody to do on a piece of paper, goes I think even puts it in a fucking box so they can't replicate it, because copyright, you're not buying out the copyright, you're just buying the artwork. You're just buying a representation of the artwork. And they put it in a box and they're like, right, there's the key. You promise you're not going to go do unlicensed copies of this artwork. And then, there was some insane thing where I'm pretty sure this was like, I need to reread the article actually, but there was something where a piece of art like that actually had a secondary market for it, where somebody had basically been able to sort of make an unlicensed copy, and it was sort of like, oh, what are we going to do? And it's like, this breaks my brain. It has no, it has no essence, no form.
The art world's too weird to me. I get Pokemon cards, but nothing else makes sense.
But I mean, I think so. The author of the article is Mackenzie Walk, who wrote Capital is Dead and wrote a number of also very good things. But I think also at some point, I'm pretty sure I saw her post a wry tweet. I don't think they're a fan of crypto, but I think they posted something like, well, NFTs are pretty much the final form of art, aren't they? So
the Frey, I didn't quite get what you're saying, but it sounds like your art in a box is like the Schrodinger's cat of art, in that it can be simultaneously shit or good as long as it's in the box.
Something like that. I don't remember if you get to read the piece of paper or whatever. The name of the article, if you want to Google it, safe search on, is My Collectible Ass by Mackenzie Walk. I think that's the name of the essay in question. So yeah, it's quite good. It's another one of those ones that makes you go, hold on, there's nothing new under the sun. But yeah, like, so what do we actually think of? So in the context of like really specific things, then, like, what do we think of, like, because say like the gelato thing, like, I think that's quite interesting because they did a prop like quite some time ago, right? And everybody was like, and then they went and built it, and now they're like, well, we built it. Can we now have some money to continue building? Like, I mean,
you know what I have to say about this.
Please.
Well, there's two things. Now is not the time to ask for money. Like, pain everywhere, that you're just fucking throwing away big handfuls of tokens that will be worth a lot more later on. But that said, make a fucking sustainable project. Like, why does everyone have to subsidize everyone's projects? I just don't get it.
Well, because there's no the argument is simple, right? Especially for a chain like Juno, and implicitly every other chain, the token has no utility unless work is done, and the work is the work of the smart contracts. Like, the smart contracts you need smart contracts to do things in order for there to be utility. It's a fucking Ouroboros, isn't it? Like, there's no.
So why have a bunch
or it's a
of
circle.
chains
What was
like
it? What was
circle
Rido's? What was Rido's term? It's a circle stake, isn't it? It's a circle stake. That's what's going on.
But why? Why have all the chains then? Like, if they're all competing for the devs, why not just have one chain and let them create some sustainable projects until they run out of, like, available compute on that chain, and then start another one? Like, why try and attract all the developers if all they're going to do is come and take the free money and then fuck off? Like, you need to encourage people for reasons other than taking money from the community pool to develop, or taking money from a dev fund to develop. Like, They clearly don't want to fucking be there.
Yeah, but
Get people who want to be there.
No, you know,
Why?
there's this,
What? But
no,
you
there's,
know,
there's
if
this, but there is a saying, right? There is a saying in the labor movement of a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, right? I don't believe in working for free, and I try not to do it. Like, I worked for free on Juno for however many months, 6 months or something, but that was a very, like, that's the thing you do once in a kind of career, because you're just like, this is genuinely interesting and it might go somewhere. But you shouldn't, and like the fact that then, you know, there were a lot of things around that situation that meant that that was even possible. One of them was obviously like working on other stuff to bring in income and being a freelancer already and blah blah blah, you know, like it was a privileged position. But you shouldn't work for free. Like, that's just a fucking dumb.
so,
You know?
should people? Okay, you live in a community, and you know, they want the community to be good, right? They want to make a great community, and then other people come to the community, and we all have fucking hold hands and spin around the circle, right? So you have you want to, you know, you're there in the community, you want to have a project and get paid for it, right? So you come up with a project to like create a Lego sculpture of a squirrely turd that you can put in your cupboard and never see the light of day again. You're doing work. Should you ask everyone to pay for you to fucking do it? I don't know. Does it benefit the people who are paying for it? Like, why? You know, maybe
Well, it
you
depends
ask
whether
for you ask for $1 million to
depends whether
create
we
something
are
that's worth nothing.
It depends on a few things, right? It depends on whether we are actually a community. It depends on
Well, you are asking a community of token holders to pay for something.
yeah.
And if that is just to pay someone for doing work that they're doing, there has to be inherent value in the work that they're doing. And there has to be sustainability of the project for the work that they're doing. Otherwise, they're bringing no value, and you're paying them to just fucking jerk themselves off.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, the point is that we're just a bunch of fucking nerds on the internet, right? So actually, like, yeah, you don't have to. All of the social costs of not paying somebody for doing work are borne elsewhere, right? And in addition, most work is unnecessary because. But the problem is, in essence, the issue is this, right? Which is that most of the stuff we're doing in this space has no fucking utility. Most of it is a circle stake. So, in order for anybody to turn over enough rocks to find the really good use cases, okay, there are some ahead of time we know are garbage. We know there are some ahead of time that are probably quite good, right? But there is also an element of infinite monkeys at infinite typewriters, isn't there? Where you inherently want to get smart people in the space and start them banging rocks together, because that tends to be how good stuff gets turned over. I mean, like, that's literally the model for like what they called Valve, and that's the model for 3M Corporate. Like, this model's been tried a number of times in corporate history as an incubator for innovation. The thing that's hard to control for is not the project, because most projects are garbage, right? It's the quality of the people that's hard to vet, right? So it's like, I think, is the problem not like social or talent or whatever like that? It's not the money per se, right? Because if you just hang on to the money and then the chain never goes anywhere, the chain dies, it goes to zero, and all those hypothetical tokens that were worth $1 are worth $0, so they go to zero anyway. Like, the end result is that you die.
the money of a network, right? The token money is from the token holders, right? So the value of a network, the market cap of a network, is based on how much people are willing to pay for the token for the network, right? Every time, especially right now, every time we spend money from a community pool or a dev fund, we fucking take a bat and we smack the fucking community with it. right? Because it's incredibly damaging. Even 30, 100 grand at the moment to sell on market is damaging with LP pools the size of $2 million, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that I think that if you believe in a project, you will build it for free if it's a sustainable project and you know that you can make money out of it. There's a bunch of hands out in the ecosystem for people that just come up with a project for the sake of coming up with a project to get some money to build it. So
That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, though, right? Where a lot of these so-called handouts, they don't actually follow through a lot of the time.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't follow through, but a lot of other people just come up with a clone of another project and copy the fucking code base and make it look a bit different or add a feature or something, just to churn the wheels so that they can get paid for their time to do that shit. And then it inherently has zero fucking value because it's just a clone of something else, and it's just people spinning their wheels to get paid for their time. So,
Which incidentally,
what is that good for?
I just want to observe that we've accidentally stumbled onto the porch of David Graeber's third book, Bullshit Jobs,
Does he
where
have more than one book?
I mean, well, I think he had 5 or 6 before he died, possibly more. Sorry to the ghost of David Graeber if I got that wrong. But yeah, I mean,
Did you read the Adam Smith book after you read the
which one? Sorry,
the one that Graeber talks about all the time?
Oh, Wealth of Nature. You mean?
Yeah.
I thought you meant that Graeber had written some book length
No.
critique of Smith. But I had to read The Wealth of Nations for college.
You had to read the entire thing for wow. Isn't it like 1,200 pages?
It's not that big, is it?
I think it is because it's broken up into 5 parts, right?
Maybe I read a condensed version then, because it was the version I read was not 1,200 pages. Maybe it's like there's like an excerpts of it for like an economics primer or something.
The Cliff Notes version.
I mean, a lot of it is just like fucking the good bits are fucking obvious, and then a lot of the rest of it, as it turns out, is completely apocryphal anyway. So, what you gonna do? But I want to just pull out. So bullshit.
In the
job.
cart, Wealth of Nations in the cart. Another book.
Yeah. So anyway, well,
I've heard the Theories of Moral Sentiment is also really good. His first book. So just throwing that out there. It's in my cart that I need to buy. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
So no, I was just saying, like, I think what you're describing there, Null, is that like you shouldn't do bullshit jobs. Basically, like jobs that don't need doing shouldn't be done, and that's maybe the problem we have here. Thank you, David Graeber, for helping us with that one again. I'm just going to go to the
waste
comments.
of resources.
We got a shit ton of comments, so I'm going to pull some of them out.
Oh, you're fucking hang on, hold the fucking phone.
Holy fucking sec. Right. So Adam Bomb says
does Amazon not keep your cart?
It depends if you got. Shut up, Niall. It's time to do some comments. Adam Bomb says, upload DNA to an NFT, then clone the dog when it dies. Like it. That's very. What's the film where that happens? Is it AI or is it?
No, that's a Black Mirror episode, right?
Is it? Okay, right. There you go.
Yeah. So
AI is Pinocchio, isn't it? That's just a science fiction Pinocchio. Cause less harm says art equals money laundering.
Don't run through the comments. So there was a Black Mirror episode where it was like an end of life thing, right? So after you decided that you've had enough of the real world, you could go and upload yourself into the computer and you just live forever in the computer.
That was also Neil Stephenson's last book, but one.
I had to stop watching Black Mirror after one of the episodes where the guy like recorded everything with his eye. That was too visceral for me. I had to back out. It was way too much.
It's too real, right? I fucking love Black Mirror. I wish they kept going with it.
It's absurdly good. Fantastic. I would recommend it to anyone, even if I can't stomach it.
I even loved Altered Carbon. Continue the fray with you.
I'm sure I've said this before, but the writers of Nathan Barley were the original writers of Black Mirror.
Of Nathan, what is that?
Nathan Barley, which is the hipster parody show. It's an old British comedy. which I don't know if Noel watched, but I know Usurper watched. It's got like Richard Ayoade, sort of very young Richard Ayoade, and Julian Thingy from the Mighty, who had gone to be in the Mighty Boosh, and yeah. Anyway, but yeah, they did a really good comedy show, and then they went on to write Black Mirror. So yeah, Cause Less Harm says art is money laundering.
In some cases, it is. I think that.
In many cases.
Yeah, I
But no.
mean those big value things. I think there's a bit of money laundering and also tax evasion going on on Ethereum with like the big value NFTs. But I think that like NFTs can also just be community and fun as well. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be money laundering. Like the cheap NFTs that we've got on.
Well, I don't
Stargaze.
think his point was, or their point was necessarily.
Oh, sorry, he said art
NFTs.
equals
Art.
money laundering. Right?
Yeah, art.
So
it's
got
interesting
nothing
you
to do with
jumped
NFTs.
to NFTs and money laundering, Noel. I think you have some subconscious.
No, well, that's like the main point of NFTs, right? That's why they were created, to money launder.
I mean, to be fair, that's what happened with that Beeple one, wasn't it? It was literally them buying their own NFT, wasn't it? They were just wash trading their own NFT. I don't know what jurisdiction they're in, so allegedly wash trading their own NFT, just in case they're in the same jurisdiction as mine and watch this podcast. Anyway, Soy2 Studio says the whole funding community funding concept in crypto is nonsense. Imagine going on Dragon's Den saying we have no product to track record. Fund me, please.
I don't agree with that. I would say community funding is more like venture capital in the sense that you're generally, from what I've seen, like presenting what I want to do, and this will be the fallout. Dragon's Den is you have your product, but you want to actually like expand it from its current market, right? So I would say they're not quite the same.
Yeah,
I think some people go on Dragon's Den with an idea though, right? Or like a very early stage product.
Some, but they're the ones who have been put in by the producers to get laughed at. Because remember, the producers vet everybody they're going to put on the show, right? So they specifically put in some people to get laughed at for entertainment value, and they're all the people at idea level, pretty much unanimously, are the ones who are going to get laughed at. But then I don't watch every episode of Dragon's Den, so there are probably some exceptions to the rule, right?
My favorite one was probably a like $2,000 water filter, where they talked about how it tasted so good. It was a pyramid scheme, of course. And then they gave some of the water to the Dragon's Den folks, and they hadn't like pre-filtered it or whatever, so the water tasted awful. And so they were like, "You're trying to give us like shitty water. What are you doing?" And one guy was just like streams of sweat down his face. It was
So they literally
beautiful.
just gave him like a cup of water.
Oh, they gave him literally a cup. It wasn't from a tap. He had like a little water filter machine, which are normally, like $50 or whatever, but they're selling it for like $2,000 with no real value add.
Put some like menthol in it.
Ben Davis says application-specific blockchains should have specific applications on them. Yeah, couldn't agree more. We should distinguish between public goods funding and business funding. This is actually a good point, which is that, what we've just been talking about there, which is kind of the props that are coming up and seen elsewhere, is very much about projects, right? Whereas Rama roasting people on Twitter was very much about funding for already delivered software, maintenance of that software, etc., which is, that's the Confio piece, that's the core infrastructure piece, right? Which is like much more like almost like a B2B support contract or something like you would see in the corporate sector, maybe. I don't know. But they are different things, right? So yeah, and then following up on this point earlier, Soy2 Studio also says in an industry full of grifters, the purse string should be tighter than the real world, which I guess is kind of like a different way of saying what Noel was talking about. God, there's a lot of comments. Thanks, lads. I'm just gonna have to read them all out, aren't I?
So hang on. I'm gonna interject and just say more shit because I like the sound of my voice. So just with funding and projects and stuff, right? It seems to me like any project worth building, people build and make an app chain out of it. Is this not the app chain thesis? Like, you have to wonder why you would even have general purpose smart contract platform at this point.
Ooh, I mean, for one, general purpose smart contract platform, you have a community to leverage, right? If I was building on Juno, I would feel no guilt in messaging the Fray and being like, hey, I'm having this issue with a smart contract. However, if I were building my own chain, I wouldn't feel quite the same about it because
Yeah, it's
then
like
I'm building
solve
a
it yourself.
competitor. Yeah, exactly.
What was that?
I
Sorry,
That's,
what'd you
that's
say?
my stock response to, by the way, on disc. No, it's not. It's not.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be general purpose app chains. I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, also, I think that part of the problem that we've encountered so far is we haven't had a lot of very ambitious app chains just yet, in my opinion. We've got, Crescent is just another DEX. Osmosis is just a DEX. I know Osmosis is way more than that, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just a DEX. We haven't had anything that really leverages, a full app chain concept yet. So I think that whenever you're talking about something that might take a year or two to build, it makes more sense to go to the ICF or whatever for funding before you actually start building. Like you need to get funding to funnel for a full 2 years or however long it takes to actually build.
So
I mean, this is the essential problem of where we are right now, is that the app chain concept assumes that you have time to build time and money to build an app chain, right? Which at the moment, it doesn't really seem like people are capable of leveraging the SDK for anything other than minor modifications of existing stuff. I mean, like Juno V12 is a big package of features that took a long time to integrate and test, but they are largely, if not entirely, I mean, there's some new stuff in there, obviously, because there always is when you integrate other software and you have to tinker or add things that are specific for your chain. But they are adaptations, right? There's not really a novel concept to all of that. And actually, there's an argument of whether or not you should be adding too much custom stuff to a general purpose chain. That's probably for another day. But like there is this fundamental disconnect between developer ergonomics required to make app chains possible in a meaningful time frame before a team runs out of money, and where we demonstrably appear to be with the SDK. Or, maybe we're just still too early, and in a few years' time, there'll be thousands of SDK developers knocking out app chains.
The point of the SDK is that you just have to write your module, right? And just make some minor
so why don't people do that?
SDK? Yeah, I don't know.
Developer ergonomics, that's the answer.
So
why do people
like
write way more smart contracts than they write SDK modules? Because the ergonomics of writing Rust and Cosmos are way better.
Or is the mechanics of WASM more appropriate to what they're trying to do?
Well, also that actually, there's a pretty strong argument that you may as well just have the lightweight VM and just move on with your life.
You heard it here first, folks.
I think we've been talking about this for nearly a year now. But right, I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, shit, right? We've got to get through some more comments. So Rama says Gelato has 30k Juno in volume in 6 months. Rack has 2.5 million volume. If you can't make a product, people, why be funded? If you can't make a product people use, why should it be funded? Shots fired. Adam Bomb says, this is at me, I guess. I don't think the infinite monkeys theory is an efficient use of resources. We should be infinitely better at identifying a true need and working to solve it. Well, we won't be infinitely better. We can only be slightly less than infinitely better, because that's how infinity works. That was a really needlessly trolley response, but yeah, you're totally right.
I mean, we could be just slightly less shit at it.
We should
begin
be.
With.
Charlie Brooker being married to a Blue Peter presenter never makes sense to me. There's a really good lockdown thing where he has to do an episode or something from his own house, and it's just him and Connie Huck and their children, and he's like, everything's insane, but I'm married to the nicest person in Britain. It's very weird, very funny. God, all right, okay. Community. Okay, so they're talking about community pools. We got a minute left. As Noel will tell you, community pools are not assets. They're liabilities against liquidity pools. Any community pool spend is reflected as a reduction in the price of the tokens you hold. And that's why you need to be careful about community pools, which actually is a point that Null has made before.
Many times.
You're somehow smarter than you look, Null. I'll just say that. And yeah, God, yeah, and yeah, there's a lot more comments along that line about the. I know I'm about to get rugged, so I'm just now like, I don't know what to do. So anyway,